Okay, here's your first back in history lesson of the new year. On this day in 1643, English mathematician and natural philosopher Sir Isaac Newton was born. He remains one of the most influential to have ever lived. He was most famous for discovering gravity and the laws of motion, which still determines the way we view the universe. He died in his sleep in 1727, possibly of mercury poisoning, so he didn't know a lot about personal physiology, apparently. On the same day in 1865, the New York Stock Exchange opened its first permanent headquarters at 1012 Broad, near Wall Street, New York. The NYSE started when 24 stockbrokers signed an agreement under the Buttonwood Tree on Wall Street in May of 1792. Today it's the biggest stock exchange by value, of course. And on this day, January 4th, also marking the Independence Day of Burma, now known as Myanmar, from British rule in 1824, after the Burmese skirmished into territory held by the Brits and now what is known as Bangladesh. That triggered the first of three Anglo-Burmese wars, which eventually saw all of Upper and Lower Burma ceded to the British until it was given its freedom in the year 1948. Okay, the festive season is over. We got another one just around the corner in the form of the Lunar New Year, but that doesn't mean you have to give up your jolly, good, drinking fine wine and food habits. For most of us, it just means having to adjust our palates a little bit, learn how to pair your favorites with the more pungent, often, tastes of Asian cuisine. Joining us on this section of the program is Jeannie, the very first Asian ever to be awarded the coveted Master of Wine title, less than 300 in the entire globe, and by the way, author of Asian Palate, her new tome, I dare say. I was going to call it a book, but it's a tome. Her new book on wine with Asian cuisines launched just before Christmas time back in November. Jeannie, happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Happy post-holidays. Happy New Year to you.
Yes, you
How is
too.
the first of all, how are sales of the book going? This is a first of its kind in many ways, right?
Yes. Actually, 2/3 of the first print has already been sold.
Really?
And so probably...
So another run's coming then?
Yes, the second run will be coming before June this year.
Wonderful. And what's really resonated with the people snapping up the book? Is it a first, or am I just making that up? Is it a first of its kind?
Well, there have been other books pairing food and wine,
right,
obviously written by Europeans and Americans, but I think for a comprehensive look at different Asian cuisines, I haven't been able to find any. Excuse me. So.
This gets very into the nitty-gritty of it. I mean, you don't just say what goes well with Chinese food. I mean, you break it down province by province, geography by geography. I mean, there's Hunan food, there's Sichuan spicy food, there's the more, less fiery Cantonese cuisine, Hakka cuisine. I mean, you have it. How did you approach this? I'm just curious, because as a master of wine, you are well schooled in wine techniques, and your palate is well refined, presumably. But was it a matter of like trial and error, or was it a matter of like chemistry and knowledge?
I think I approached it the same way I approached wine, which was that the very best cuisines have a sense of place, where it's from, the origins, I mean, the history, and the whole cultural aspect of it. So it was very easy for me to approach the book in a way that looked at the major Asian cuisines by city. So each chapter is broken down by city: Hong Kong, Shanghai, Beijing, Seoul, Tokyo, Singapore, Bangkok, even Mumbai. So it was easy for me then to look at a specific place where the cuisine originated, how it evolved. So each chapter goes into immigration flow, goes into some of the cultural background, and all of that actually influences what we eat, what's on the table. You know, how noodles traveled, how rice and different species of rice permeated throughout Asia.
Now, presumably you didn't do this from your PC at home. You actually traveled and you experienced these different places. So this was not something, Asian Palate was not something you threw together in 2 or 3 months. It took quite a bit of groundwork.
2 years.
2 years.
2 years.
Of travels.
I call it 2 years of pregnancy.
That sounds like a nightmare.
Giving birth to the first baby.
Were there any surprises? I mean, there are basics to even rank amateurs like myself. Like if you're going to eat something very, very fiery, for instance, you don't want something that's going to shock your palate the moment you tip the glass into your mouth. You want something that offsets it, that perhaps balances, I don't know if yin and yang is a correct term when it comes to pairing Asian cuisine and wine. But were there any surprises? I mean, did you go to Bangkok or did you go to Kuala Lumpur and say, wow, this is what I presupposed, this is what I actually found?
Yes, absolutely. I think there were many to begin with. I think one of the biggest surprises was the fact that there are a lot of red wines that actually go with spicy food.
Red wines that go with spicy food?
Yes.
See, I would assume you'd go for Sauvignon Blanc or a Chardonnay or something fruity and light and non-offensive.
Yes.
But that's not the case.
Well, that's
though.
one approach. So that's an approach to take if you're not trying to pair intensity with intensity. But when you're talking about very intense flavors, a full-bodied red with not high tannins, because it's really the tannins that fight against a lot of the spices, that create the burning sensation, that may exaggerate flavors that are not particularly pleasurable. So it's when you're actually pairing, let's say, a very ripe, fruity Merlot with soft tannins, or a fruity Shiraz, again with softer tannins than a Cabernet would have, then actually it can go very well with spicy Indian food, with curries, with food from Bangkok, Singapore, Malaysia.
That's very interesting. And did the regional cuisines, because there's always this, the generations, of hand-me-down assumptions, or that if you're eating a steak, if you're eating red meat, then you probably want something that can keep up with it. If you're eating fish or poultry or lean pork or something like that, you want something maybe towards the rosés or toward the whites. Was there anything, and beef is produced differently, is cooked differently, prepared differently, very different, dramatically differently, depending on which cuisine you're talking about.
Exactly.
So that kind of change throws everything on its head, correct?
Which is exactly why I wrote the book, because traditional food and wine pairing really looked at ingredients, meat, fish. Because if you look at a typical Western, what I call a plated meal, your entire meal comes on a plate.
You can see it.
You can see everything, and that's the range.
Right.
Whereas Asian cuisine is much more about condiments, sauces, a myriad of various dishes that can range from, 6 or 7 is common. Typical family meal, vegetable, fish, meat, soup, all served at the same time with a bowl of rice.
Or like I had a 12-course Sichuan meal at a private kitchen here recently. It's like chef surprise. There's not even a menu. You don't even know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to have some general assumptions going in. The first run, how many books how many of these of the Bibles were printed here?
3,000.
3,000. Well, that's a drop in the bucket. You need to get them to print 30,000.
Well, that's because we're charging so much for them. I think they're
it's not
fairly
that much.
expensive.
It's nice on the coffee table. It doesn't. Hopefully, doesn't get it hidden on the back of a dusty shelf. The title is Asian Palate: Savoring Asian Cuisine and Wine. And our Asian very first Master of Wine, Jeannie Cho Lee, is our guest today. Thanks for joining us, and Happy New Year
Bernard.
once again. And thank you for watching. Remember, red doesn't equal pairing with white, nor vice versa. Anyway, I'm going to have to work my way through the book to really get my palate highly refined.
Asia Confidential was brought to you by BNP Paribas, the bank for a changing world.
Of the India Capital Fund. Not a billionaire, are you? No.
Both falling on a report UK's rating is at risk.
Joined by a very special guest today, Prime Minister.
Of 1%. Honda's American depository receipts rising to high.
We have lots and lots of Hong Kong and the PRC.
Well, stocks, but it's been a pretty tricky morning because Asian stocks.
It all comes together at The Source. Bloomberg Television, The Source.
An exclusive conversation with America's most trusted.
You want to be greedy when others are fearful, and you want to be fearful.
That's the way I win Grand Slams. I think everyone.
An amazing collection of interviews.
You now can watch Charlie Rose around the globe, weeknights on Bloomberg Television.